Excellent. So I guess we'll call the meeting to order and welcome everyone here and can I ask for an approval of the agenda? Second, questions? All those in favor? All right. Little roundtable discussion. I think maybe the first thing we should do is just introduce ourselves and I think I'll start with myself. I'm a recovering mayor of Gagetown, who became the mayor of Arcadia this past year and have been involved in municipal politics for about 11 or 12 years now after having moved to I myself live in the village of Gagetown, and after having moved there, I quickly jumped into municipal politics and never looked back. And maybe I should have looked back, maybe I should look forward too. But it's been a great experience for myself and a great experience being in a small community in rural New Brunswick and working with a lot of great folks. And coming through local government reform, I see all the challenges ahead of us, and I also see all the opportunities. And I had said many times in the last year and a half or 2 years coming out of COVID that New Brunswick is going through a period of renaissance. And I'm very happy to see that to sit around this table and sit around the Capital Regional Service Commission and sit around the Arcadia Council to be a participant in that renaissance, because we can be active participants and help this province grow. And that's my choice. And I believe that's going to be the choice of my community, and I hope it's the choice of this committee. So I just throw that out on the table and pass it along.
Okay, thanks, Derek. My name's Grant Sinclair, and I'm just finishing up a 35-year career in public service that has been within the recreation and sport sector for the full length of that term. I've worked a bit in the not-for-profit sector to start off with, planning, programming used recreation facilities. Then I managed or directed a municipal parks and recreation department for 11 years. And in the past 24 years, I've been with the sports and recreation branch of the province of New Brunswick. And one of my files has been lead with the infrastructure within the infrastructure area, and providing advice and sector reviews on various development opportunities and funding programs to support municipalities and regional service commissions as it relates to their work in the recreation and sports sector. So I was asked by Don and John a while back if I consider sitting on the committee, and I thought since I'm finishing up my term with the government, I'd be happy to sort of sit and learn from you folks and provide whatever assistance I can. So happy to be here.
Thank you. All right.
I'm Marty Forsyth. I'm chair of the rural district in RC 11, and it's a vast piece of property. Whatever couldn't go to the municipality went to us. Some places I represent has nobody, which is kind of interesting, but that's the government for us. And we have a big tax base. In fact, we have a huge tax base that people I know are probably trying to attack a little bit, but that's fine. And but I've been with the LSD in Burton for 8 years now, I think, and then it turned it over to government reform when I went to an election. I can remember my wife asked me, well, I asked her if I was being recruited to be an MLA a few years back, quite a few years back, and her answer to me was, how do you spell divorce? So I've always been in the back rooms of politics. I'm good at it. But she had no problem with me running for this for some strange reason, because it's our house and backyard. She doesn't want the rural life changing in any way, which form or whatever, that she can do what she wants to do in her backyard, which she spends a lot of time. So that's why I'm there. And because I got elected, then I got elected chair. That means I'm in two committees, this one, which I wanted to be on, because that's what I've done all my life, sport. And recreation. And the other one I'm on is the PrAC committee. And that's an interesting committee to be on for somebody that's been, oh, it's what? First Tuesday of every month and last Tuesday of every month is busy. So other than that, it's fun for the dollars and cents that I make.
Okay, perfect. Marty and Pratt, yeah, who would have thought?
I know how many chickens you're gonna have and how many ducks. you're gonna have.
Animal.
He just said,
Yeah.
dealt with Central York the other day.
So my name's John Jackson. I'm the CAO of the town of Oromocto. I guess in my professional background is architecture. But I came back to New Brunswick in the mid-90s and quickly figured out that they needed help. So I started work with what was known as the Rural Planning Commission, which is now this basic office. And worked there for quite a number of years, and then moved on to help government and justice and public safety and trying to push some files there. Then was recruited to go to the town of Oromocto as at the time, the director of planning compliance. And now I'm the chief cook and bottle washer there, so to speak. So, my background in particular in this file is multifaceted from, I'm probably one of the very few that's been in provincial, municipal, and rural. I've hit all three. So I can speak from experience in whatever we want to talk about. And I appreciate those who come from the rural aspect, as well as those who are living in the more urban municipal world. So I hope that I can add whatever I can add to the group, and yeah, so that's me.
Thank you.
So my name is Don Fitzgerald, and I'm a commercial banker by trade. And after 22 years, I made the switch to local government. I was at the city of Fredericton for 10 years. I was the executive director during what I'll refer to as the first iteration of the Regional Service Commission. I spent last year as a facilitator, local government reform facilitator, working with 6 different reorganizations that were municipal to municipal and municipal to LSDs. And during that, I developed an appreciation for the questions, anxiety, and hopes of the constituent communities that were being reordered. I'm now the chief operating officer for the Capital Region Service Committee. And with respect to our subject matter here, while I was at the city of Fredericton, I was the lead on the development of the convention center. I was part of the oversight team for the development of Willie O'Ree and the Grand Harvey Center. And during my tenure here, I was the lead for the feasibility study on the pool, which is, creeping at a slow pace towards completion. So I have some experience with recreation and cultural infrastructure, and I know that each project's different and complex, and I'm looking forward to being a resource to this group.
Thank you. Kelly.
I'm just IT for today, thanks.
Yeah, sure, you're much more than that.
That's a lot more.
I'm Dave Duplessis. I was chair of the Douglas LSD for 10 years before the government reform. Now mayor of Central York. Central York is made up of parts of 6 LSDs. We had we still have no infrastructure. We can't acquire any until January 1 of 2024. We basically have desks and chairs, and that's our claim to fame, I guess, from at the 1st of January. We do claim the lowest tax rate in the Capital Service Commission, though, according to the government statistics, which is good, and we're still managing to function thoroughly with that tax rate, so. I'm a farmer by trade. My family and I farm just over 1,000 acres. So you understand I'm very rural as they come, so. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Smith. I'm the CEO of the Capital Region Service Commission. I bring to the table a mix of private, federal and provincial experience. My last role or my last gig before this in terms of work related was with the Department of Intergovernmental Affairs, where as the Chief Relations Officer for North American Relations, which actually provided me the opportunity to be the lead negotiator to complete the integrated bilateral agreement on the Investing in Canada infrastructure funding. So it was a lot of that funding that you've applied for to use in multiple areas, or maybe getting geared up to apply for. I understand that fund's being recapitalized at this point in time. And once we have more details on those, that'll certainly provide some light on projects and development and regional, sub-regional and local projects as well. So I've only been, I feel like I've only been here a short period, but I was saying to Don and Kelly yesterday that in another month and a half, I'm into the 1 year mark. I signed my contract in September and started in September, and it seems to have gone by extremely quickly. So, and I'm still stumbling around and knocking my knees now and again, but I'm getting there, and I appreciate your patience and tolerance, and it's all been good. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One other thing I'd add is, from going around that round table, we've got a lot of experience around the table. This committee in particular, nothing we do coming out and going through local government reform is easy. And it's probably not going to be easier in the near future. But whatever we do discuss, discern, or plan, I think if we do it from a point of moving things forward, being cooperative, keeping it positive, and this is about gaining. I look at government reform as about gaining agency, not losing agency. And everybody around this table here, around this table when the board of directors here, around our council tables, and our council offices. It's about the agency we have, we're elected to, or we hired to, and using it for the betterment of our community and our region. So I always kind of step back and reflect what I do and what actions I put forth. And while it oftentimes can be very difficult, if I believe, and I work towards that belief that we're doing it about keeping agency, keeping our communities, keeping our backyards, is what Marty has said, keeping our farms, as David has said, keeping them the way we want them to be, want to grow. What people are now discovering New Brunswick is been known for, but unknown for, and they're starting to appreciate. We don't want to lose that. And I don't want to lose that. I grew up here, lots of opportunities to leave, never did for any amount of time. And I'm very glad I made those decisions. Very glad that I'm in the position I am in today, that I can help others realize where we're at. But again, it's about keeping our agency and using our agency for the betterment of our communities. So just throw that out there. If you want to know what drives me, that's what drives me. I won't surrender the agency. So CRSC actions to date.
Yeah, so it's been a very busy time at the Capital Region Service Commission. On June 28th, we launched our strategic plan, our 5-year strategic plan, which was developed by our member communities, our leadership, our directors, and of course our CAOs and EDs and reps from the communities. With input from everyone. So it's been very good. We're still continuing to consult with groups outside of that. Within that, one of the handouts that I was handed out just a little bit earlier was a page out of the plan and talking about sport culture, sport recreation, and cultural infrastructure. Talks about what we will do, in terms of the Capital Region Service Commission and what we hope our outcome will be. There's also an implementation guide that we can share with you as well. Within that, there's also one of the others that I handed out was a letter to Minister Savoie, our new Minister of Environment and Local Government. It was signed off by our chair and the chair of the committee, Mr. Bleedwell, or Director Bleedwell, in terms of being compliant with the act. Under the act, by June 30th each year, we have to submit a letter to the minister talking about where we are at in the determination of regional infrastructure projects and sub-regional projects, and what does that look like. So we've shared that letter with the minister, and I'd spoken to the department before that was sent. It was drafted it with intention, and they knew that all of the other RSCs are still getting their letters in as well. So we are more than compliant. We're ahead of the curve on that. It just talks about what we're doing, and one of the things it talks about in there is at the direction of the chair and meetings. We held 3 meetings with the CAO group to discuss infrastructure, and our board chair, or our committee chair, sorry, did attend those meetings to hear what was being said from the ground level. Primarily, they were talking about what is regional infrastructure and what's coming up and what may be on the list, what could be potentially on the list, what does that look like? And of course, living with our values and principles, one of the things that they were looking for was the fiscal responsibility within that. So we've held those meetings to date. We've also, as part of our process, in our annual meeting in April, there was terms and conditions passed, and the structure of our committee structure was adopted at that time. And this is in your package here today. A lot of the packages, background information for you. And if you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out at any time, or we can discuss certain things at this point today. So we're really excited that you folks are all on this committee, and we're looking forward to full participation. And I'm your senior lead on the committee. I believe in terms of management that you do as well as you ask to be done. And so I'm your senior lead on that. I'm being supported by Mr. Fitzgerald and Ms. Shaw, and we're certainly very more than willing to help out in that way. So what we're looking for on that is just to kind of give you an overview of actions to date so that you're aware, and where we're kind of headed, and that type of thing. So, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, that's a summation of our actions to date, and one of the important things out of that actions was that inventory project that is underway. And
Yes.
sitting in those meetings with the CAOs, the 3 meetings, I think it became very apparent that, knowing where you stand and what could potentially be regional infrastructure, and having that firm understanding across the table is probably one of the most important things. And it was nice to see when these guidelines came out from the province that we were pretty much started on step 2. Had a committee, started the inventory. And I think we're looking at having that completed by the end of July, right?
Yes,
Yes,
if not before.
if not before.
And I apologize to the members. When I mentioned the letter, I should have mentioned that we had engaged Gemtech to do a deeper dive. We started one within ourselves, and as we were chatting earlier, there are some communities that have been recently formed that do not have infrastructure. They had nothing to report, but there are other assets that may be able to be identified within that, maybe a trail system, maybe linkages within that way. Maybe there's other things that we may be missing within that. So it was agreed in terms of at the request of the CAO committee and in discussions with the chair, and then coming back, we decided to make the expenditure and engage the service of Gemtech, and they're currently under there, and their terms of reference and the cost and everything is actually included in here. And I also spoke with some of our partner agencies and departments in GNB, and they will, they've indicated that that's something that they could most likely help to support and living within our fiscal responsibility as well.
I think it's important to note also in going through the guidelines and that the survey that's happening as to what is infrastructure is not necessarily even, and you had mentioned it, John, by trail systems. It's not necessarily even what's, you know, we pay the bills on in terms of our municipalities or our rural districts. It's could be natural infrastructure as well. It could also be something held by a not-for-profit within your respective community. Infrastructure is kind of can be an unwieldy word, and I think as we go through that, as we go through this process, I think people may come to realize that a lot of the infrastructure that exists in their respective communities, you know, is not just brick and mortar. And I think looking at it from the perspective of what I'm looking for, I'll use the word attraction, healthiness, you know, wholeness, what brings people, what are your assets as a community? That's infrastructure. It's not just, does it have a door, a well, and a septic? No, not necessarily. So, you know, that's what we've got a wealth of, we got a beautiful province, beautiful part of the province here. And it was nice to see some of that recognized in this document, but I think maybe not recognized as much as we probably should be recognized. And when that infrastructure report comes back as to what exists out there within the Capital Regional Service Commission, it'll be nice to look through it, but I think we might even be just scratching the surface, frankly. And, you know, that talk about, it's not just about existing infrastructure, about potentially new infrastructure. As mentioned, we have some communities with absolutely no infrastructure to date. And it strikes me sitting around a table a couple of months ago where a neighboring community, as we were talking about infrastructure, they had said, we've got 2 plastic tables. That's all they had, and we're operating out of a coffee shop, and they would take coffee orders because someone thought that they were operating a coffee shop. No. So we've got all facets, and then we're sitting now in a city that has incredible amounts of infrastructure. So we cover the whole gamut here, and we all sit around this table here in this committee and here as the Capital Regional Service Commission Board, having to recognize that. But I'm very heartened by the fact that the guiding principles and values, that whole thing, equitable outcomes and collaborative governance is there, because approaching that around this table and as a committee, if we keep that in mind, all of us keep that in mind, it'll make us stronger in the end. So any other comments from anyone? So, jumped on a soapbox there for a second. Feel pretty strongly about this.
The only one question I have, CAO meet with Brittany there.
Yes,
Good.
yeah, she's always invited. Yeah.
She's always goes.
No, she has a high attendance rate, I'll say
Yes,
that.
very high attendance rate.
Yes.
Just jumping down to regional projects. So, you know, as circulated in the package coming into this room, one in particular is of discussion, and we had an announcement. Was that a week ago?
It's about a week and a half.
About a week and a half ago with the Regional Aquatic Center. And, you know, we have 4 communities surrounding this. Well, 1 we're in, 3 surrounding where we are right now with Hanwell, New Maryland, and Oromocto. Within that, currently committed in that project. We're at the design phase of it. Happily at the design phase that is funded by those communities. And this is one of the ones that is certainly top of mind for us from a discussion perspective, going forward in the next year on, as that progresses through. It's been I'll say a long time coming. It's been a long time discussed. It's gonna be
over yet.
no, it's not over yet. It's no,
This is where the rubber hits.
this
the
is
road.
where the rubber.
We wrote the act, now we need to make the reg, tells us the rules, boys, that's a whole other beast.
Isn't it? But this is, it's this table. We sit around this table, we discuss how we're going to work through this, that's one particular regional project. That's, you know, everybody's mind, there's a lot of folks' minds that are on that one project as being, that's a regional project, that's a regional infrastructure project. And it's coming upon us to see how it fits with these guidelines, fits with our strategic plan, how it fits with our guiding principles and values, and fits with the communities that will roll up into it, either from both funding and usage. So, and it's going to be an interesting road to go through. It's going to be an interesting road to go through. And not to mention, there's another one, it's a performing arts center as well. That is
Keeps going up in price.
underway. Here in Fredericton. That is just kind of sitting off to the side for now. And we'll see how long it sits off for the side. But the Regional Aquatic Center is certainly going to be top of mind for this committee and top of mind for us to figure out a path through and to see how it meets the objectives and meets the objectives of where we sit as a board and what we've defined in terms of what our visions are.
One comment, Mr. Chair, with
Yes.
respect to the participating communities in the Regional Aquatic Center. Former local service districts were a part of that agreement, and they're now constituent parts of new municipalities. And so I think going forward, that's an area that needs to be better understood by everyone.
No, good point. So, and there was a financial contribution as
There
well
was.
through the gas tax funds.
There was,
as far as
yes.
that, The tune of,
Was that for design, Don?
Just.
That was in the feasibility study.
Feasibility study.
Yeah, we did receive funding in that under that envelope. And it was roughly around 234 in terms of 234,000. And that
That's for
was-
the design, right?
Design.
Yeah,
design side.
for architectural
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
So the thread continues.
But that funding comes because the rural communities didn't have access to that gas tax stuff either as well.
It was
Not very much,
voluntary.
It was voluntarily taken, so it's beyond that structure very quickly,
taken or given.
whatever. It's not being used, so it was,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
Yeah.
you know, every year, that's part and parcel of becoming rural, you're now incorporated, so now your access, the availability of getting those dollars is easier than not,
Yes.
right? So,
That's how our combined LSDs contributed to it, was because we just realized the funding wouldn't be used for something else, so it may as well be used for the
exactly.
feasibility study.
And how was that, how was that received in your communities? Was there much active participation or?
95% of the community don't even know
Yeah,
what went on, so.
Because it didn't hit their pocketbooks.
right. Because it was, yeah,
It's money that's there every year that you can get, but if you don't get it. Right?
it wasn't a
It
denominator.
didn't affect their tax bill,
Yeah.
so it was just gone, they didn't realize.
But that goes to the point. Here's the positive thing about sitting around here today. You folks and LSDs that were former LSDs that are part of Arcadia as well. We're their agency now. We are the agency to determine whether it's a good thing or a bad thing and to what extent it is.
Yeah, now I have 26 LSDs I'm looking after, not just one,
Yes.
but that makes me even uglier. So,
No, better.
yeah, okay. Responsible for a lot more tax money,
Yes,
not just the
Yes.
Britain Gary people, so.
nearly $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion. I know we're third on the list. It's better than Ormont doing than us.
Yeah.
So that's where we can go use the base pool too.
Yeah.
And two pools on the base, so, you know, that's. And it went from a 25 from a 50 to a 25, so that's really just a pool in the city of Fredericton. It's not now a regional pool, or in my mind. My argument. Because it's not like St. John, which was a 50 meter. So, right up front, I'm honest,
Not happy with the size.
Huh?
Not happy with the size of the pool.
not a regional pool now, as far as I'm concerned. That would be my argument.
How did it fall from 50 to 25?
Well, there was a regional aquatic center feasibility study done. And
Which our LSDs helped fund.
And the study itself at the time determined, and they met, they had public engagement, they had consultation, they had online surveys, and then it was a determination of what the needs of the region were and are, I guess, and because it's still a living document. And at that time, it was determined that the best way forward was with a 25 meter.
I know coming out of my office, it's the 25 meter is not, they're not very happy with it. I think it should be 50 if we're gonna spend that kind of money. It's kind of like what happened to the rinks in the city of Fredericton. Spend all these money on the new rinks, there's no seating capacity to amount to anything. We can't get major participation in these rinks because they just don't hold anybody, but yet we spend all that money. Why we didn't spend enough money on one of the particular rinks to have a capacity of, 7,000+. We don't have that, and that's what they're afraid about with the pool. We're spending all this money on the pool, and it's not official size, it's half capacity, and
If I might, I was just wondering in terms of that, Director Duplessis, are people also aware that there's a leisure pool and a therapeutic pool that are components of this? If it's not, that's the kind of the swim lane, the big attractive piece to it, and then there's also the other two pieces.
yeah, they're aware, it's the competition level they're concerned with.
That's
Bringing
the
in,
whole purpose of the Zoom that I was on, was a competition tool. That was all that was discussed. Because they were using numbers, because I challenged them on it. They were using numbers from the
It's like I say, John, with the rinks, the ice surfaces are the same everywhere. They don't change. It's the capacity to get people in there for high-end events that we're lacking. It's not the ice surface, but with the pool, yes, it is per se the surface area, because you can't get your competitive events in there, your high-end competitive events.
See, they're gonna apply for the Canada Games is coming to Fredericton, or St. John, sorry. Canada Games is coming into Brunswick, summer one.
yes,
If Fredericton, I don't think if they don't have a 50-meter pool, they're not gonna be able to host them. Swimming, is that correct?
Well, no, you can,
That 25 will come host.
well, that decision hasn't been determined yet between the province, Canada Games Council and Swim Canada, right? Like they have, that decision will come between now and December of 2023. So traditionally, Canada Games is a long course pool, which requires 50 meters. Short course racing, which is a 25-meter pool, is gaining momentum in terms of or gaining importance in terms of international competitions and national competitions. But where we'll be in 2029, it's still to be determined. But even if a municipality, like, so the three largest centers have been invited to attend an information session concerning hosting the Canada Games of 2029. We have one 50-meter pool in the province. Whether or not that 50-meter pool is even up to standard now is questionable. It would need probably a sizable investment to bring it to current standards. But there are allowances that would make it possible for like the Greater Moncton area, capital area to bid and host and if need be, have the swimming competition based out of St. John. It would probably require like a satellite village that the athletes would spend some time in St. John and not bully here or.
so not unlike the winter games where Prince Edward Island, Crab Mountain was
Correct,
hosting
correct.
in another province.
Yeah, but now, it's important to remember, like, it's these games are hosted, there can be athletes centered, right? So the least amount of travel time you can provide for an athlete, the better, and that's highly considered. So it's not a good thing by any means to make people drive that extra hour or to be living outside the larger athletes village. You take away from the experience of the athlete. But having said that, it doesn't rule out communities that don't have it. Oh, go ahead.
But that's what I was saying, that the whole aspect of it, in that meeting that we were having, is they were using the numbers from the Fredericton pool. Not just the UNB, that combined the Fredericton pool with the UNB numbers. Well, the same people that are using the Fredericton pool will continue to use that Fredericton pool on the north side. So you can't use those numbers. And the numbers that they were telling us on that Zoom from that group. As far as I'm concerned, they were poor salesmen, tell you the truth, but that whole aspect there, I was not very impressed. And I challenged them on their numbers because, I mean, the old saying goes, figures lie and liars figure. So that whole aspect was there. You can't be using the numbers on the north side, that north side pool.
So when it comes down to it, there's some concerns around the fitness of what's actually in design. I don't think there's any opportunity to go back at this point. The design has gone through. The aspect of it being suitable for larger events. Some of those one and done events. Is a concern, obviously a concern. I think looking at its suitability for our communities, the people who live in our communities, whether it's seniors, or high school students, or whatever. Do folks around the table feel that, within their respective communities, there's a desire for a pool? Access to pools, access to good infrastructure for that kind of recreational activity. I know personal experience. Oftentimes we're toting a child, not in the summer months. We had a great pool, which is called the St. John River. Although rocky at times, not. But other times during the year, we're toting children and other people's children around the province to take them to pools, so that they can participate in a sport that sticks with you the rest of your life. Which is important. Very important, because it's one of those things that has a very low barrier of entry, extremely low barrier of entry.
And your point about swimming in the river, I mean, the argument that gets missed, I feel, has been overlooked significantly, is the fact that pools teach people how to stay alive. The whole water safety piece is critical, and we with this facility, we have gone to the 50-meter argument solely based on capacity to host high-level swimming competitions, competitive swimming. And we overlook so much more in terms of, what is our region's capacity to teach proper water safety. And right now we don't have capacity, and the danger is, like, the numbers that I'm aware of is going with a new 25-meter pool. We risk losing what we currently have for capacity, because I think that the UNB, the Shamax Aiken pool, is often misunderstood. People consider it a 25-meter pool, but it's more than that. It's closer to I think it's 40. I forget the exact number, but it's like 45, 47. It's almost 50, because you have the diving tank, right? Which allows for multiple uses at the same time: diving, synchro, competitive swimming, all that stuff can take place in the same tank at the same time. I think we've got to be aware that, going with a 25-meter pool, it makes the option of doing that much less. Hence, you're decreasing your capacity to service your aquatic needs. And I just feel that argument has been missed. And and with all due respect, the city of Fredericton, I think, has put has guided that discussion as to 50-meter versus 25-meter.
Do we have a cost difference on them? Are there any figures?
There have been figures in the feasibility studies. Now, John, like, can you tell me, like, the design piece I'm seeing is 25, the plan is 25-meter, 10-lane pool. But I haven't seen specs on deep end, diving tank, like, has that been, guidance been provided?
No.
Like, so that, and we know what we expect to get back.
Not yet, but I'll say, just from my own experience, and here in the comments, which I fully recognize, oftentimes you get placed in a position where the feasibility lends to your return on investment and what you can do with it, let's say 80% of the time. And I know 50 meters sounds good, but quite frankly, then it's only being used as a 50-meter pool for 20% of the service life of that building. That's huge dollars, because at the same time, I'm hearing people want to remain rural, don't want to pay too much taxes. So then it's a decision-making process when you get to my level as to, well, which one do we do? Do we burden people with a higher tax rate because we want to have competition for, quite frankly, a small amount of people and a small amount of time for the use of that building? Or do you try to leverage and maximize the use of the building? Same with 7,000 seats. In arenas, seating is exorbitant because every time you go out a row, you have to build up, and that increases your footprint, increases the engineering costs. And New Brunswick, I know I'm a hockey guy. I mean, we would fill us here in the Fredericton region, a 7,000 seat arena, like not very much. It probably wouldn't be our good return. And we've tried AHL teams twice. We've tried, and so our best draw is UNB, and they get about, say, 2,200 people.
If they're lucky.
But it does hold us back from major junior.
It does, but I'll be honest, if Bathurst could give their team up, they would. It's a loss leader. It bleeds money. Luckily, they've got some
They played in the Aiken Center and never filled that.
Yeah.
Or St. John and London.
But I get it. I mean, look, we as people fundamentally always have a champagne taste on a beer budget, right? When I built my house, my wife wanted all this stuff in it, and I'm like, okay, well, this is how much it's going to cost. And then she's like, well, maybe we could not have that. Maybe we don't need that, right? So we're all that way, right? And this is no difference. And it's just about trying to figure out, okay, how do we spend our money in a way that we know the building for that small percentile of either events or people might not be 100%, but we want to capture the 80% in whatever we're investing in. And it's hard. There's no question. We're not going to make everybody happy no matter what we do. Because you could go and build, say, in this case, a 50-meter pool. We're going to have a whole bunch of people pissed at us because we're spending too much money. Or we can go build a 25, and then we're going to have some people pissed that we didn't do the 50. I mean, that's the reality that we face. But certainly, from my perspective, I don't really have a position either way. My position is, what works best for the folks that I have to look after in managing their money. And what's best bang for their buck in terms of being able to give that to them. So, yeah, all good comments because they're all valid. It's just, it's usually going to come down to that almighty buck in terms of, cost versus operation and maintenance. That's the big thing too, And
Yeah,
folks
knowing
in
your
St.
community.
John and how they like that 50-meter pool now, if they could, crunch it up and throw it away, they would, but it's been there for 40 years now.
Knowing your community is extremely important in that, and I agree with what you're saying. It's, how is it going to be used? And I have not participated or read the feasibility studies. I'm hoping it's captured how it's going to be used.
But that's where we get off track, like the argument goes into thinking that we're building 50. Because it's going to attract those big events that are going to draw all kinds of people. It's an economic argument more than, and it shouldn't be. It's a social, it should be a social argument, right? Sport and rec is a social service. The same way as education is, same way as health is, right? So you look at the usability of a 50-meter tank, it's multifaceted. It's not about having all these people come in and fill hotel rooms and like, I mean, all that stuff is nice and that comes along naturally, right? Like that's just an added benefit, but like the investment really, I think as a committee, we should be looking at it from a social investment that allows, that tank allows for, you know, like multiple use at the same time. Because you know, the 50-meter tanks you usually have a movable bulkhead. So you can have the diving, synchro, competitive swim, all that stuff happening, water safety, boating, construction. 25-meter tank doesn't allow for that. So,
Yeah.
you know, so anyways, I often like, you know, I've been involved with this for the last 15 years and, like that's the worry I have is the argument becomes purely dollars and cents. And I recognize from your guys' position, that's critically important, but from an investment, like, do we want to invest in, it's going to cost us a lot of money regardless. Do we want to invest in something that once it's built, we don't have capacity, like we've lost capacity. I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, that's going to be more of a
It's not
nightmare.
like a barn where you put a lean-to on the side and park your tractor.
That's right. You get one crack at it, eh, Derek? And
But it's the same too as if you build a school and you didn't build it big enough. Like Leo Hayes used that as an example. But you also said that there's not just the 25.
There's a
meter pool.
leisure pool
There's a leisure
and
pool,
there
other stuff
as well.
Could be access. We also have the Y and we also have the pool over on the north side.
Yeah,
But those are facilities, two of them are fairly new.
And with all due respect as well, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
With all due respect, you know, when you're looking at it as well, you gotta look at it from, and Grant, you had said this as well, in terms of that, looking at it from the point of view of the capacity and looking at that, looking at the shelf life of the UND existing facility now, the fact that we're ready to execute on the design and you know, the architectural and design phase. It's taken us really 3-4 years to get to this point. I'm not saying it would take us that long, but I'm just saying there is going to be, would have to be a reset button if it was to be looked after in terms of that, because the RFP that we put out was for a 25-meter pool, right? And with a leisure pool and a therapy pool. So going back to the design and the drawing board on that, I don't know what that entails. I'm not an architect. Maybe John can shed some light on that, but that may have that. We may have some cost to absorb just from going back to reprogram from that as well. So, you know, there's multiple considerations within that, but I think in terms of that, Mr. Chair, in terms of that, I'm just looking at the time, but we can share further information with the committee on that, the feasibility
Yes,
study, and
that would be good.
a little bit more around the design and stuff, Grant, in terms of what you were looking for there and be able to share that and have a look at it. Because there is, you know, there's information in there that certainly may help to frame a further discussion later on. And again, you know, to this point, we're just having a conversation today. You know, we've got a process that we have to go through and we have to continue to work that through.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first meeting I attended on this pool was in 2008. I was with the city of Fredericton at the time. So when Grant says 15 years is well for 15 years, I can warrant that that's the case. I was going to say, John said much of what I wanted to draw the committee's attention to. Right now, the commission has a mandate to design a 25-meter pool. We don't have authority to think outside that box. If our constituent communities want to reevaluate that, they have a process that they can go through in terms of engaging their municipal councils. And that's what's going to be required if for this project to be rethought. And so from a staff point of view, we've been pointed at this direction. We're well down the road. But that doesn't mean that it's
A fait accompli.
the first meeting that Grant and I were attending was in 2008, right? So,
I guess the good thing about, the fact we're sitting around here in 2023. It's a long time from 2023, but the conversations we're having here is representing large bases of people in the capital region. The conversation, what Grant just said about the social aspects of the school. These are kind of hopefully some of the original discussions started back in 2008 that had carried through for the last 15 years that came in as part of this decision making, I hope. But I also don't have the magical Scooby-Doo bus to take me back in time and know that and make changes. But going forward, again, that whole agency and influence that we have, we can impact stuff going forward. And as Don just said, we can push things up through our councils if we feel strongly enough about it, about impacting change on this specific one. Once we look at the feasibility studies, get a good idea of the history, maybe we need to do that. And I'm not here to say that we don't need to do that, or that we do need to do that, because I'm one representative of this committee. And it would be hearing from Mayor Rogers, you're hearing from the city of Fredericton as the drivers. But I know I come here. I know lots of people from my community come to this city for the reasons that Grant had mentioned. They're not going to be doing, they're not competitive swimmers. They're here to live in the aquatic nature of our province and survive, basically, keep their head above water.
And hearing all this, like the 2008 and, studying it all this time, like our council's 6 months old.
Yeah.
We had nothing before but LSD, and we had no say in LSDs, as Marty knows. Like, if there's could be a change, should we not be able to take this to council and say, look, what's your opinion here, and have some input and some say? Rather than this is already implemented and, we're going down the road with this and a council that hasn't even been around from day one when this was talked about. And
the thing is switched now. It was the city of Fredericton building
yes.
the playhouse. And it was the city of Fredericton pool.
Mhm.
And 6 months ago, well, it's not even a year yet, so 6 months ago, it's suddenly now Capital Region pool.
Exactly.
I just heard that now. I've never heard that.
But that's my
To me,
point.
that's-
That's my point of
It's
view
us.
here, so.
Yeah, but that means I'm gonna have to pay for it. Which is a big thing, and if we have 1% of our population that may use it,
So
But
that's
that's the thing, if we're
that's where we can
that's where the issue comes.
recircle back to what this group needs to consider is not to chase the rabbits down the hole, but to try to figure out
What we're gonna do.
how do we frame a I guess, process whereby we can all agree that if they're gonna do something, how do we pay for it?
If we're going to do something.
Right,
It's-
if that's gonna happen, what does that look like? Because, I'm in the same boat with a pool. My community feels strongly that they don't need it. That being said, we also share the lens of regionalization, but it's like, okay, so how do we discuss what does that look like? And so, right now, we know we're being told, well, we use 50% tax base, 50% population, that's how it is. Well, that's gonna hurt you in your 1%. But if we can say, hey, look, if you have access to these types of, and they're within, is there a ratio, let's say, by which we're using to deduct that original formula that this group can create and all agree to, and then we'll allow the designers to design and the people to have discussion on what they need or want. Because we've already built the frameworks that we know we can live by, because again, champagne tastes, beer budget every time. But so if we can create that base on how we're gonna measure that, and that's, I think, what we're here.
Well, that's it, that is our role, and I mean, we're moving along here, because we are talking about goals and objectives,
Yeah,
right?
and if I could just say one thing to John's point there, which is very important. Watching one of the national news channels this morning, and they're talking about individuals, Canadians, right across the country, talking about we need the need of affordability and the concept of that. One of the studies they showed, and please don't quote me if I'm wrong on this, but it was over 50% of Canadian households right now are concerned about their ability to manage $1,000 crisis in their home, an unforeseen expenditure of $1,000 within their home. I think when we looking at what we're doing here, I'm not saying no to anything. I'm here to support whatever the board, the committee, and then through the board tells us what to do and implement that. But the reality is we got to look at our current reality in our context. And we understand that there are some communities within our regional service commission that are struggling just even with their own taxation abilities and their identities right now and things like that. So what those priorities are, this has been as Don said, this has been an ongoing process for 15 years. We've got a feasibility study, yes, a few years old before we were formed, in all fairness, Director Duplessis and Director Forsyth, and we look at those, but we also have to look at where we are in that reality at this moment as well. And not saying that we can't take a look at the numbers, can't say that we can't take a look, but we have some work to do before we get to that point to be able to really assess that and really see what that impact is in your communities. And they're your communities. I live in one. I live out in Anwell, so we're one of the participants of as Oromocto and Fredericton and New Maryland, in terms of that. So and the LSDs that have participated through now it's called the Canada Community Building Fund, or the former gas tax. So I just wanted to not want to be the Debbie Downer, but I just wanted to point out some economic realities.
Fiscal responsibility,
It's on our guiding
Yes,
principles
it is.
over here, and that's what I keep looking at when I look at it.
equitable outcomes,
Exactly.
like those things, we all came up with those things, and it's really, really, really important. And
You have to have some say, and if you're going to be putting the dollars and cents in, you have to have some say into what's actually happening as well.
And we do.
Yeah.
Well, we have a great deal of authority and power. And it doesn't, I don't let that, and don't let people take it from us. That would mean we're giving it away.
But-
Because the rest of us.
Just not outside the box or whatever, but now if it's a regional pool. Does it have to be in Fredericton, or can it be in Hanwell on a property that was given to you free? Just a simple, that's the question. I'm interested. I see the answer to that.
I think the location has been pretty much chosen. And
I think there's something- I think there's also in reading, I've read through the entire package, there's some synergies there with geothermal heating, and there's some
Exactly.
big takeaways.
Where
to help.
There's benefits to it, yeah.
But it's very.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something we all have to try to overcome as we move forward, for sure. I mean, I'll say, just from my own background of logistics, I mean, there's certain things you build where you have services to be able to operate and maintain those. A pool in this neck of the woods is the absolute worst type of building to try to operate and maintain, just because of the nature of controlled systems and all that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, does that preclude, as we move forward, having discussions about other regional assets not in Fredericton 100%?
Because of the infrastructure and the assets that we have in all of our respective communities, they're quite varied
Right,
and different.
So if it's going to be the capital region per se doing this, then it should be, can go with different areas of the capital.
Absolutely.
And one of the discussions we'll need to have is what do those future projects look like? And
Yeah.
that's, the Gemtech study may tell us where we might be headed, whether it be in central York, or whether it be somewhere within the rural district or the town of Oromocto, or whether it be in wherever it may be, not with Millville even, that who knows what that will bear fruit to give us that insight to. It, this is all a learning process. We're new, we've come together. We're up there. So I think, in terms of that, I guess what we have to look at, Mr. Chair, is probably developing, our terms of reference and how we move forward and how we move forward together. And, in terms of that, normally, committees on average meet, quarterly or a little more frequently if need be. We could look at putting some terms of reference together for the, for a meeting and maybe regroup in August if we can find a date when the majority of the members are available. Get some further information that you're looking for out and go from there. But I think I'd be remiss if I wasn't completely transparent, which is over on our, respect.
If all we have to do is just stare at that, and we'll be guided well.
We'll be guided well
We
with
will.
transparency and accountability. We're ready to conclude the contract and everything with the architect and design team. We've already made that initial commitment, so there's responsibilities and obligations there that we have to uphold. So I just want the board or the committee, to understand that within that, but certainly, we'll take direction as it comes. And that'll go through the board for, to be vetted, and that'll most likely happen in the September meeting or the first meeting of the board in the fall.
And I think, this document, the guidelines for regional service commissions and the conversations we had as a commission as well. Regionals, one thing, we've talked about sub-regional as well, there's an aspect of that. And Marty, to your point, we are in Fredericton right now, and Pole is being considered for Fredericton. It's well on its way from there. And frankly, probably makes sense for a number of reasons that I've read.
I never said that, I just asked that.
No, absolutely. I know you didn't say that, and because you talked about the value of some of the things that happen in a facility like that. But I mean, I like to think that, I'll put my hat back on for Arcadia, that we can bring value to the region as well. Frankly, I know we can, because I see a lot of people from this region and from other parts of the province and the country and beyond in our community. And that not just helps my backyard grow, but it helps Fredericton, helps Oromocto, helps Hanwell, helps everyone, because they're spending money in restaurants, they're spending money at malls, they're buying products, and I have to say that I hope, more than hope, I will demand that we get help from other communities when we put something good on the table. At least demand that it's considered.
Yeah.
Demand that the business case and the desire and the outcomes will be, good for the region and equitable and affordable.
Mr. Chair, we do have, as John had pointed out earlier, there's a process with them.
Yes.
And then there's up to us to try to put that process in place of what that looks like on the contribution, within that. Or, the alternative to that is when we submit our letters and, by June 30th of each year to the minister, the minister has the right to make decisions as well. So what we would like, or what I would like to see the committee and the board achieve is a robust process where everybody understands what that looks like, irregardless of where the actual project is, if it's regional in nature.
I would add, because it's my nature, I like the process. More important is the participation and discussion. Active participation and instruction and all, to get a feeling for each other, because and the demands and what we what our realities are as constituent communities, because without that, the outcomes won't be, the shoe may not fit. And I don't want it jammed on me.
So, Mr. Chair, I guess we'll look at, we'll send out a draft terms of reference over the next couple of weeks. And through staff, and then is it through you, Mr. Chair, to the will of the committee to meet in August again? Do we want to meet in August, or do we want to meet?
I think, so we should have the inventory done by the end of this month,
Yeah,
and I think we can circulate that as soon as we have
circulate
it.
that, yeah, and have that as part of the discussion.
I think
How
that,
that informs part of broader discussion, and we'll circulate further materials that were requested here today.
and from a terms of reference perspective, have a read of this. It's quite perspective, prescriptive, I would say. One thing I would add, though, is
That's it,
even though it's prescriptive in terms of what they believe, what's believed to be terms of reference, it's called a guideline for a reason. Does it fit with what we feel as capital region we want it to be? That's what we have to kind of flush out. And again, we all agreed on these guiding principles and values. Does it represent that? Is there something missing? I will continually go back to the point that all of our representative entities in the capital region are at different places at this point in time, and will continue to be at different places at this point in time, not just financially, but from all facets of what makes a community. It could be just in pure organization, where there's a number of communities that are just really getting their feet underneath them. 6 months. All LSDs, 22 LSDs. We're operating out of construction trailer, it's, we're all over the place, and there's some important decisions from here, but we're setting a process out here. We're having collaboration, and we're having discussion that will make a big difference to our communities for years from now. And so when we come up with these terms of reference and have these discussions, keep in mind our guiding principles and values. I can't stress how important it is that try to get it as right as rain. Is that a saying? I just think of rain a lot.
yeah.
Why would that be?
Why would that be? And what's the need of a pool anyway? Okay, so next steps, is everyone okay with a meeting in August?
We'll send out some possible dates there. Kelly will help schedule us, keep us on track on that, and keep us in the loop, and we'll have the documentation out to you as soon as possible, probably over the next couple of weeks. And that'll inform the next steps in our process.
So some of the documentation, so it will be the inventory, any kind of that feasibility stuff that might have
Yeah,
been.
we have all that that's readily available right now.
Great.
We can share that. And the other documentation as it comes in, and the also a draft terms of reference.
Awesome,
And we'll do that at it.
excellent. Any questions from anyone? Okay. I get a motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor?